This is from Raz from Manchester. Raz from Manchester wants to know, it's a question.
All right, mate. What's going on, Raz?
He says, hi, peeps. Great show. Keep up the good work. Question for Mike. I've noticed the middleweight division giving you shit. More specifically, the top 7 demanding that you owe them all a fight. Do you find it ironic that everyone in the top 7 is accusing you of ducking while they duck each other, fighting lower-ranked fighters in order to maintain their own rank? Surely the fights to make are Yoel versus Rockhold, Whitaker versus Mousasi, Jacare versus Weidman, while you make history against George St. Pierre. Even more ironic is that you waited a decade and fought everybody without failing a single drug test to earn your shot. You're not holding up the vision. They're choosing to be pussies and not fight. That's their choice, not yours. So they're just holding themselves up. Boom! Raz from Manchester. Boom. And it might have been Michael Bisping sending himself an email under a fake pseudonym, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say there's not a lot I can say, Raz, because you said it all. Thank you very much for those kind words. But, I mean, here's the thing. He's right. The top 7 are calling me out. And whichever one of them, because they're all tough. They're all tough guys, let's be honest. You know, they're all very, very good. Whichever one of them I pick, the other 6 are all going to bitch and whine and complain. So you can't win. You can't win. I'm fighting George St. Pierre. Fucking deal with it. If you want to fight in the meantime, go ahead. I mean, Luke Rockhold's still talking shit. He hasn't put a glove on since I knocked him out in the first round. Yoel hasn't fought for a long time. You know, fight. If you're so good, continue to fight. When I didn't have a title shot, when I wasn't the champion and I didn't get a title shot, I didn't whine and bitch and complain. You know, I just got on with it and I kept fighting. And, you know, I hoped, and, you know, I always had that in my heart. I'll just keep fighting and keep doing what I can do. And here I am. I got there in the end. So, guys, come on. Stop whining, stop bitching, just get on with it.
All right, number 2. Hey, Mike. Just wanted to start off by offering just wanted to start off by offering my condolences for you and your family for the loss of Dito. I was completely shocked when I saw your post on Instagram. What the hell happened? We did answer that. R.I.P. Dito. My question for you is, how do you plan on nullifying the jab of GSP? Also, please talk about how much your boxing has improved by working with Perillo and what he's done different than your previous boxing coaches. Thank you, good luck, and let's get it done for Dito. Kyle Powers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kyle. R.I.P. Dito. Still breaks my heart. Yeah, well, Jason Perillo has done wonders with my boxing. One of the main things that he's had me do, I mean, listen, not one thing. I mean, there's been many, many things. You know, I put my combinations to better. I believe in myself more. I plant my feet. I'm using better head movement. It just, you know, the list is endless. I've just improved all round as a fighter. Main thing, mentally as well. But of course, physically and technically, much, much better. Jason understands the fight game and has such a great way of just relaying that information and getting the fighter to understand it. You know, me and Jason, we go there and we work the pads and we work the bag and whatever it's going to be. And I've said this on our radio show, but a lot of the best work that we do is after our training session. You know, I've killed myself. I'm dripping wet in sweat. I'm exhausted, and I sit on the canvas, and he stands there and he talks to me, you know, and he'll talk to me for about sometimes half hour, 45 minutes, an hour sometimes, and he really just go off on one, you know, and he gets into my mind and makes me believe myself and talks about the fight and breaks things down, you know, because we can stand there and talk about the fight and we can drill jab, right hand, left hook. Everyone can do that. Everyone can do that. You see some trainers at a gym and you know, that just do PT, personal training on businessmen, whatever. You can make them businessmen look good on the pads, okay? Doing it on the pads, but doing it in a real life, high-pressure situation with millions of people watching you live is a very, very different thing, especially when that person's trying to knock you out, you know? So repetition's great, but taking that work, what you do, and making it transcend into the real life, in a real life fighting environment, that takes something else. It takes years of practice, and it takes mental power, mental training, experience, many, many things. So Jason really gets into my mind, and we discuss many, many stuff, you know. So, yeah, that's the big thing with Jason there. Nullifying the jab of George St. Pierre. It's simple. Parry, motherfucker. Parry that jab. I see it coming. Boom. Parry. No good. No cigar. You've been impregnated by an alien, bitch. Boom. Put him on his back foot. Parry the jab. Jab him back. Put him on the back foot. Go forward. See, in the past, I would have backed up, worrying about that takedown. But now I'm going to go forward, have him on the back foot, have him worrying about left hook Larry, sending one to the dome. And I'll put him on that mothership and send him to Uranus. Yeah, just parry the jab, man. Parry. Head movement. Fakes. Just, have him guessing. What am I going to throw? Is it going to be a head kick? Is it a jab? Is it a right hand? I'm moving, herky-jerky, go left, go right. He doesn't know what the fuck's going on. Next minute, he's been punched in the face, he's down on the floor, and he's off finding dinosaurs or whatever the fuck it is he does.
Boom. Love it. Mike, that's the
Easy.
show. Real quick, because we have a lot of fan questions. I don't want to get to a few of them today. I wanted to just touch on this because I thought it was pretty interesting, and I thought you could probably shed some light on some perspective here. Ryan Bader, who just left the UFC for Bellator, and, Bellator is picking up a lot of guys. Rory McDonald, Ben Henderson, Bader. I mean, these are legitimate top 5, top 10 guys that jumped ship, went over from the UFC to Bellator. Bellator is, doing a pretty good job at slowly but surely, luring some of the bigger name and better skilled fighters over. What Bader said, though, one of the things that I thought was interesting, he said that he could make 3 to 4 times the money in sponsorship dollars at Bellator that he was making with the UFC. And this is his quote. He says, it will be 3 to 4 times what I was getting with Reebok for sure. Bader, who's number 4 in USA Today, said, this is from MMA Junkie, by the way, I had a couple really good blue chip sponsors that have stood by us through this whole Reebok deal that are still there, like the American Ethanols and things of that sort. Then we got some new sponsors coming on board. We're full for this fight. So, yeah, here's the deal. The question for you, Mike, and is Bellator in that system better for some fighters? And if so, why is that?
Right, hold on. Let me just make something abundantly clear, okay? And I don't mean this in any way, shape, or form, any disrespect to the fighters that you mentioned, and I'm happy for them all. But the reality of the situation is, and I want Bellator to go from strength to strength, and I want everybody to have the best career they can and make as much money as possible. But if you think for 1 second that any of the guys that have gone from UFC to Bellator have gone there because they were outbidded by the UFC, then you're a fool. They were gone there because the UFC don't want them anymore. And the UFC know they weren't needle movers. And I don't mean that. I'm not trying to be a dick. It's like, okay, they were like, all right, Bellator's willing to offer you this amount of money. Well, fine, we'll go ahead and good for you. And they will. They'll probably will do better in sponsorship because, of course, the Reebok deal does have, limitations for people. And if you got a good agent, and they are big names, what you mentioned, Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, people like that, they can have a great career in Bellator, but the UFC and Viacom, the owning company, they do have deep pockets. But the UFC always have that right, I think, in the contracts to match the offer. So unless they wanted them people to actually walk away, then they wouldn't walk away. It's not like they got outbid on the marketplace. That was the UFC saying, okay, we don't really, okay, Bellator are willing to offer you that. Okay, good for you. Take it. Have a good life. Right. That's not me trying to be a dick. That's just me laying it out in black and white.
It's just the business,
that's the fact. That's the business decision that the UFC are making, not me. I'm not saying that. Right. I'm saying that's what it appears to be.
Well,
regarding sponsorship, my manager, Audie Attar, Paradigm Sports Management, he said a while ago, now bearing in mind this conversation was, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, when the Reebok deal first came in, and I said, oh, how is that? I mean, because I guess fighters in Bellator could earn good money now. And he said, yeah, but it's not really there. It isn't crossing over like, the deals that were available for the UFC, they aren't automatically available just because you're fighting in Bellator.
Right.
The fees are reduced.
They were buying into the UFC. They weren't buying into just the fighter. They were buying into the UFC exposure.
Yeah. So, but who knows? Maybe that has changed because Bellator has grown. The roster's got better. The production's got better.
Well, also with the UFC,
it's definitely on the rise. It's definitely, it's still not competition, but it's without a shadow of a doubt the number 2 organization in the world. That's fair to say, without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, with the UFC also doing the Bellator or doing the Reebok deal, rather, what happens is all of these companies, and I know this for a fact because I was hosting Tap Out Radio when the Reebok deal went into play, and those guys were very vocal and open about kind of what it was doing to their business. There's no other play now. So whereas, yes, I think before, at Bellator, companies weren't going to spend as much money because they weren't being exposed the same way. It wasn't that blue chip association the same way the UFC was. Now a company like Tap Out or a company like Affliction or these t-shirt companies that have all but disappeared, the only thing they can do in order to stay in the MMA industry is go to Bellator and these overseas organizations. So there has to be some money there, and I don't think they're wrong. One of the things that I noticed as I'm naming the names, Ryan Bader, Benson Henderson, Roy McDonald, all of these guys kind of were almost in this gatekeeper status at this point in their careers when they decided to move over. There was really nowhere else to move. They either, were UFC champions, had a title shot, or had kind of gotten the opportunity for the title shot multiple times and kind of either failed or stalled, or they never got to that level where they became that star.
Yeah.
So it really, in my opinion, it was the best move for Ryan Bader. What else is Ryan Bader going to do? How long is he going to let people become number one contenders and get title shots off of beating him?
No, absolutely. I completely agree. Let me just clarify. I'm not knocking those fighters because each one you just mentioned there, they've all got tremendous skill sets.
Yeah, they're
tremendous
incredible
skill sets. And as you said, former champions, number one contenders in very tough divisions. But you're right. I mean, it became apparent that they weren't going to win the title there. So for them, it is a good move. Go to Bellator, become a champion, earn more in sponsorship, have a better career, have a second career, if you will, after the UFC. So it makes sense. But also the UFC, it's a massive company. They have people that sit down and they have, algorithms, whatever you want to call it. They know exactly what worth each fighter brings to the table, and they offer their contracts accordingly. And if they're willing to let you walk away, there's a